Bulelwa, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I suppose I want to start with the government's perspective. They've often reiterated that parents are expected to pay school fees so that teachers can continue to earn their salaries. But looking at the reality of the economy right now, can all parents afford to do so?
Thank you for having me. I think the issue that I'd like to preface the discussion with is the fact that COVID-19 has been an event that has affected parents as much as it has affected schools. So you will, in most likelihood, have parents that have not been able to make an income in the last 6 weeks. For example, you can look at someone who's like a restaurant owner, or someone who has not been, who's in the business that is not defined as an essential service, that has now been placed out of pocket for 6 weeks and is in all likelihood not able to recover the income that has been lost. So yes, there are going to be significant numbers of parents that are affected by COVID-19 in this period.
And also, I think it's important to make the distinction, Bulelwa, between public schools as well as private schools, because in my understanding, they work absolutely differently, just in terms of the contractual relationship they share with the parents. So starting with public schools, I mean, what rights then do they have to enforce payment from parents?
So a public school is regarded as performing a public function in terms of the Schools Act, and as has been determined by the courts. So public schools have, there's a section in the Schools Act that allows public schools to grant exemptions to parents that can no longer pay school fees. So if you like, you can say that excluding a child because of non-payment of fees in a public school is a lot more complicated. Where a parent cannot afford payment of schools, then they should apply to, for example, for an exemption. If, however, you are in an independent school, the Schools Act does create a distinction. An independent school does not perform a public function in a similar way that a public school does. And what the law says in that aspect is that public schools, when you send your child to an independent school, you've made an informed choice. And your relationship is governed by contractual law, the law of contract, where both parties are have certain obligations. One, that is to say, your child is entitled to a certain level of or standard of education, and you have then the obligation to pay the fees. So it's a symbiotic relationship that's governed more by contractual laws of principle of contract. And in an independent school, non-payment of fees can be regarded as a breach of that contract.
Right. And I mean, I suppose the interests of the child in this case have to be, taken and prioritized. So let's talk about then the difference between public schools and private schools when it comes to, the interests of the child. Should a parent then fail to pay school fees, can a public school suspend or expel the learner? And of course, vice versa, even with independent schools, can they do the same?
No, so with there's a specific provision in the Schools Act that says you cannot refuse admission or coming back to school or access to education to a child in a public school. Matters have to be, settled, and there's got to be more of a negotiated situation. In an independent school, we've had case law that has found that where parents have not paid school fees, schools can, for example, attach that property. We've also, but even in independent schools, though, there is a provision that says best interest of the child must be looked after. However, with independent schools, the advice that we've been given is that, or rather that we have been giving, is that it's going to be negotiated. There's going to be reasonableness. COVID-19 is a new spanner in the works that has not only affected schools themselves, but also parents. In other words, schools are in a position where they can provide the service, they want to provide the service, but due to the national lockdown and due to the lockdown also imposed on them, they aren't able to do so.
Right.
And in the same vein, parents want to pay the school fees, but because of national lockdown, they aren't able to do so as well. So this is going to require reasonableness, flexibility, agility from both parties so that we do not have a litigious approach to the issue.
What would you then say, Bulelwa, before I let you go, to parents who may feel that they take their children to, private or more private schools rather, and they're not getting their value for money? This, I mean that when they pay for the school fees, they're not only paying for tuition, but the overall experience at school. We're talking here sports or even extramural activities, interaction, engagement, etc. How would you feel should they say perhaps we deserve a discounted rate and not necessarily the full amount, because children perhaps get e-learning, and the e-learning or the work that they get via email, WhatsApp, Zoom, whatever the case may be, may not be sort of sufficient as it would in a classroom?
A lot of parents have raised that issue. I think there's two distinctions to be made here. Is that by schools deciding to go on online learning, it shows commitment and dedication and agility on the part of schools. They've had to do this without any prior notice. So I think those schools have to be commended for doing that, firstly. Because when it comes to public schools, because of a lack of resources, public schools aren't able to match that. The privilege of saying, well, online learning is not enough, or it's not as good as what I'm paying for, I think it is a very privileged place to be. But also, I think there's also, concern that the parents feel that they're not getting the full value for it. This is where schools should start to think about how they can accommodate parents, maybe implement longer payment terms, maybe implement some kind of discounts, maybe implement payment holidays or something like that. But I think the biggest issue that we need to be talking about here is the issue of inequality, that most students, a majority of our students, are sitting idle because they don't have access to data, because they don't have access to education, to online learning. So I think that is the bigger discussion. The discussion around, independent school parents, whether they should be getting a discount or not. My personal view is that teachers are providing an essential service, essentially, in education. And where schools have been able to agile enough to provide some kind of online learning,
right,
those parents who can pay must continue paying and must continue paying in full. Obviously, there'll be parents that are not in that similar position. Those parents should be approaching the schools and for a discussion, and the schools must take that into account as well and be reasonable.
Well, thank you so much, Bulelwa Mabasa, for joining us. Of course, Bulelwa is from Werksmans Attorneys, talking to us more about, of course, that statement made by the Department of Basic Education that parents are, of course, expected rather to continue paying the school fees.